Hi, I didn't see you there. It's Aston with MotoTune. Today we are working on a carbureted Triumph Thruxton. So it's one of the 2004 to 2007 models. Allegedly, this one has not run in about 10 years, so it should be pretty interesting putting it back on the road. Not much to say about the bike. It takes a YTX 12BS battery, which I have one. I'll put a link to one of those in the description, the kind that I would use from Mighty Max because they're cheap. If you don't want to be cheap, you can buy whatever you want. It's up to you. Anyway, I'm going to keep this intro short and sweet because I know you don't want to watch me talk for 2 fucking minutes about old Triumphs. Although this isn't a really old Triumph, I've worked on those before too, and they are a complete pain in the ass. This is one of the newer, I would call it like second generation. I'm sure there's an official name that I don't know about because I'm not huge into Triumphs or anything. Normally I only do Japanese motorcycles. Anyway, again, short and sweet intro. Follow along while we work on this old Triumph Thruxton. So this is we're just going to call it 04 to 07 carbureted Triumph Thruxton. So regardless of what year this bike is, it's coming up on 20 years old, but it looks to be in well-kept condition, which is good. Hasn't been stored in a barn or anything. So we're just going to put a battery in it and make sure that the engine spins over. We might even start it on carburetor cleaner. But the tank looks like it's empty, which is excellent. The trick to doing this is just don't tip it over all the way. Always have it leaning a little bit on one of your limbs. Be ready to catch it if it goes over. So the battery's on. Lights on, so that's good. Spins over. Excellent. Sunglasses over here. Has oil in it, so there's a little sight glass over here. I'll show you that real quick. How to check the oil on an old carbureted Triumph. You see that sight glass right there? It's right there. Just put the bike upright and make sure that it's somewhere in this window and you're good to go. The owner of this bike actually took the time to drain the fuel tank before he stored the bike, so that is a godsend. That means that the tank, the inside of the tank, is still in great shape and that the petcock still works. Of course, I have to remove the tank in order to get at the carburetors, so after removing the fuel tank, which is a matter of just 2 8mm fasteners and a vent line and the fuel line, you have to remove the fuel line from the petcock. You can see I was blowing through the petcock with it set to on and reserve to make sure that it still worked. And then I'm going to go ahead and pop the air filter out of it just to get it out of the way. The customer already removed the air filter snorkel, or that baffle thing that goes over the air filter and holds it in place. He had already removed that, and from what I could tell, lost the fasteners because the fasteners weren't where the rest of the parts were. So we're going to have to replace those at some point with something. But in the meantime, I'm just removing the hose clamps for the rear parts of the carburetor right here, the parts that go into the airbox. And I'm also working a little bit on the throttle cables. I'm going to wind up leaving the rear throttle cable for after I've removed the carburetors about halfway. That makes it a lot easier to gain access to the little barrel that fits into the throttle butterfly actuator thingy on the actual carburetors. In the meantime, I'm just undoing hose clamps, and I'm also going to wind up draining a little bit of fuel out of the carburetors, so stay tuned. You'll be able to see that here in a minute or two. So we got the drain for the carburetor right here. You can see that's some of the old fuel that I just drained out of it. We're gonna drain some more out of it. See that look to it? Does that look like fresh gas to you? No, sir. So it tells me these carburetors are most likely just filthy. Need to be. What follows is just the struggle and fight that is getting the carburetors removed from these things, or from this bike, the Triumph Thruxton. The old carbureted models made from 2004 to 2007. If the airbox is still attached, the carburetors are not easy to remove from this bike at all. They're not easy to reinstall either. We're just going to skip over all of that reinstallation section later on in this video. I'm not going to show you that. It helps a lot if you remove the intake manifolds completely. It also helps a lot if you remove the hose clamps completely. That's what you see me doing here. That's what I'm working on. Well, actually what I'm working on is the throttle cables. So the throttle cables on this bike, they are a complete pain in the ass to both remove and reinstall. It's a little bit harder to work on than what it looks like. So the throttle cable, the front one, the return line, or the return cable, that return cable there's quite a bit of interference between the hose clamp and the intake manifold and that cable barrel. So you're going to have to work with it. You're going to have to play with it. You're just going to have to work with it until it comes loose. So here you can see I'm removing the hose clamps for the intake manifold on the right side of the bike. We're just going to remove those completely because not the hose clamps, but the intake manifolds themselves are going to have to come out before these carburetors are going to be removed from the bike. I didn't need it because it was a pretty warm day outside when I pulled these carburetors and when I reinstalled them. However, you might need a heat gun to help you make this rubber a bit more pliable. I could not find a good way to remove the throttle position sensor from the plug, so the best thing I could think to do was just to remove it from the carburetors and let it hang there. Before I did that, I marked where the throttle position sensor was placed. There is some adjustment there. Your best bet is to mark it before you remove it. Now that the throttle position sensor is removed, there's quite a bit of wrenching on these carburetors that needs to happen. I'm popping them upward at first and then downward. I'm just seeing what needs to happen in order to remove them completely. At this point, the throttle cables have been removed, so we don't have to worry about those. It's just a matter of moving things out of the way until see it just popped free from the right side, so now we got to pop it free from the left side. And you can see that I'm just absolutely mangling the intake manifold boots on the airbox. That's just what's going to happen. If they're really old, you might need to replace these parts. It needs to be said that this is a tricky set of carburetors to remove and reinstall. So I've finally got the carburetor popped free on the right side here. So in order to get it all the way free, I'm going to have to remove the intake manifold boot from the right side. That's finally going to give me enough room in order to slide the carburetors out from the left side. You can see now I have the carburetors halfway removed from the bike, and I'm struggling with the intake manifold boot, but it's going to fall out in my hand right now. There it goes. And then I'm finally going to have enough room to slide these carburetors out from the left side. So wiggle wiggle, there they go. And then we'll just have to remove the last part of the throttle cable, and make sure nothing else is attached to these carburetors, and they are good to go. They are free and off of the bike. So you can see here the slides are stuck. I can unstick them. That shouldn't be too hard. That does make me worry about what's underneath these top caps, so we're going to check that first. So yeah, the top cap is stuck to the diaphragm. There it is, came unstuck. The diaphragm actually looks really good in there, so we are not going to take it apart any further. We'll just pop it all back together again. These are Keehan CVK carbs. They're pretty easy to work on. Not too difficult. All carbs are pretty easy to work on as long as you're used to it. If you're not used to it, it's not very much fun. Maybe it is, depending on who you are and what you like to do. Let's see, this is what I'm looking at right here, this diaphragm. I'm not going to poke it. Springs in there like it should be. This all fits back together just like that. Alright, now let's take apart the bottoms, see what we're working with underneath here. Filth. I'm sure the other one doesn't look any better, but this is what this looks like. See how just grody, grimy, nasty it is underneath there. Hopefully the shadows aren't. Yeah, there we go. So this is in desperate need of ultrasonic cleaning. I can clean those jets up, believe it or not, but these definitely have to come with me. That's for sure. So we're gonna go ahead and shut the video down. I will catch up with you as I disassemble these completely and clean them in the ultrasonic cleaner at home. 1 week later. We're skipping over the part where I take the carburetors completely apart and clean them in the ultrasonic cleaner. Rest assured that that did happen because there's absolutely no other way that these carburetors are going to come clean. So I've just fired the bike up for the first time on a test bottle. You can see that in the background there on the right side with the sun shining through it. Now I'm going to refit the fuel tank onto it, and then we're going to put some fuel in the tank and make sure that it runs on its own supply of gas. And then we're going to do a little test ride around the block and see how it actually runs. For the last part of this video, I just wanted to talk about what a beast these carburetors were to reinstall on the bike. So it was a complete nightmare. I had to remove the intake manifolds in order to make enough room, and then I had to squish the intake manifolds back in after I'd made enough room when the carburetors were going back into the bike. It was extremely difficult getting the airbox boots back onto the carburetors. That was just an exercise in frustration, and a small flathead screwdriver and some needle nose pliers. After a little bit of frustration, I managed to get the airbox boots attached to the carburetors the way that they needed to be attached. Here you're watching me fill the gas tank up. I'm gonna need a funnel, so I'm gonna go and get a funnel, pop that in the gas tank, and then fill it up like that. That'll make things just a little bit easier. Now we're just going to fire the bike up and take it for a super short test ride. All I did was ride it around the block to make sure that it would hold an idle and that it would rev all the way to redline, which it did. The customer had installed some British Customs pipes. They're really nice pipes. They make the bike a little bit louder. They make it a little bit faster. Yeah, they make it look quite a bit better too. So you can see me checking out the alley, making sure there's not a whole lot of traffic, and then I'm going to throw the seat on this thing and take it for a ride around the block.